Welcome to I Heart Geek.
And we're back for another episode of I Heart Geek, and we're going to talk about Miss Marvel, and we are nerds for this show. We all love this show. We stand Miss Marvel. We love you, Miss Marvel, and we're all excited to talk about it. So joining me today is Blythe and Tyler and Kevin. Hey guys, are you guys ready for this?
Yeah.
Woo!
Another great
We're on
episode.
episode 4.
You know,
This is
for a show,
Yeah.
for a show that I was not excited about, every single week I'm excited about it now.
I think the exact message that we
Yeah.
got from Kevin when he finally watched the episode was, "This show is over or underrated."
Yeah, it's criminally underrated.
Criminally underrated. Yeah.
Criminally
Criminally. Like, I'm not going to say it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, but for what it had the opportunity to be and what it actually is, like, it's blown me away. I'm so happy with it.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and talk about that, because that's something we brought up. Now, listeners, we chat about this show before we come out here and chat with you, so we know what we're talking about before we start recording. So let's talk about this, because it's something that we all kind of brought up, is we're finding it very hard to believe that this show is not more talked about, because it is so good. It's delightful and colorful, but it's also got such depth, and it's such a great introduction to Miss Marvel into the MCU.
Absolutely.
I'm loving it. Tyler, what do you think?
Well, I've been jumping around on the net, and you see in the comment threads of all these articles and stuff, people are just, it's kind of 50-50, I'll give it that. But I mean, people just hammer on it like passionately. Like, it just, this is too Disney, and it's like, well, what are you expecting? And I think, we talked about how, and I've mentioned it, we're coming off Moon Knight, all these dark shows, these very serious shows, and why not give you something light and airy and colorful and bright and, fun and just overall, delightful and refreshing. It's, I don't get it, but I'm loving the show. I see a lot of people that are out there loving it too, especially people with kids, because the kids can sit down with the parents now and watch it. And yeah, I don't know what the gist is, but maybe it's just because we've been so serious lately.
I'm so serious. Oh, wrong franchise. Blythe, how about you?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's just one of those things where we've had Falcon and the Winter Soldier, we've had Moon Knight, we've had all these, everything that Disney Plus has dropped, kind of since they started dropping Marvel content, has been pretty dark. Even going back to WandaVision, if you look at the core of that show, it was a dark show about a mother losing her kids, and dealing in the love of her life and dealing with that. So it's just it's one of those things where it's a solid origin. This is probably the format that I want to see origin stories going forward. I don't know if we need them in movies anymore. I would like to see it. Yeah, an origin story done on a show, and then keep doing what you're doing in movies. Make them ensemble movies. Let the single outings origins be in the TV shows, and then when I get to a movie and I'm sitting in a theater, that's when I want to see teams come together.
Yep.
Seems like that's the direction we're going.
I think 100% on that, because you can get more depth of a character. Now I know this character. Now I know what their motivations are. Now I know their family. Now I know how they talk and how they interact with everybody. And now I'm going to put them with Thor. Like, I mean, maybe not Thor, but you know what I mean, Miss Marvel.
Yeah.
Captain Marvel. And it makes so much more sense to do origin stories this way. And I have two words to sum up why I think this show is so good: managing expectations. This is something that we as comic book fans and just nerds and everything else, or geeks, however you want to say it, we have a hard time of managing expectations. And I think the fact that just about everybody going into this show was not expecting something phenomenal. I'm like, okay, it's going to be a kid's show. It's going to be this and that. And it has completely topped my expectations. And I think that's one of the reasons why the comments are so back and forth is because people, they have this idea in their head of what it's going to be, and they're not even watching it anymore. Because if you're watching it and they're just photobomb, they're not photobombing, but review bombing it at this point. Because if you're watching it and you're a comic book fan, you're not having those feelings. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, some people, it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. It can't be. WandaVision wasn't everybody's cup of tea.
No, sure.
Yeah. I mean, dare I say, Endgame wasn't everybody's cup of tea. But if you really watch this show, you get everything that Marvel's always given us. And I don't personally understand the hate and everything, but I do. When you keep scrolling through, you see plenty of people that they are supporting this show, and I think as we near to the end, it's probably going to have a much higher rating than what we thought in the beginning.
Yeah. It just goes to show you too that you don't need to pull 100% of everything from the comic books. They've taken a lot of liberties with this show, a lot of liberties with the character, and it's worked 100% to the show. Like we're still trying to figure out what's going on in the show. Even in an episode like the one we got this week that was supposed to be an exposition dump, still questions all over the place.
Left us with so many questions still.
They answered everything and gave you nothing.
He's in the early 1900s now.
I think that's a good place for us to jump into the actual episode and start talking about some of the stuff that we really liked and some of the stuff that left us scratching our heads and some of the stuff that left us screaming, going, come on, tell me what's going on in this. So here we are. We've got Kamala and her mother going to Karachi to obstinately learn about the bangle for Kamala and to learn about herself, but obviously mom thinks they're there to help grandma out. So it's a little bit of both, and so we get a lot of the family dynamic between grandma and mom and grandma and Kamala and mom and Kamala. There's a lot of that family dynamic that goes on in there. We meet some fun new characters, Red Dagger and Waleed and some other stuff, and we'll get into that, of course. So what I liked about the opening, is we get to see Karachi. We get to even understand even more about her culture, about the Pakistani culture, about the Desi culture. And it shows us that juxtaposition between her American side and her Pakistani side. It's how she easily fits in, but she doesn't fit in. So like when they're walking through the bazaar or the market area, even her cousins are picking on her for being the American. I believe they called her the ABCD, American born something, confused
Desi.
Which I thought,
Desi confused.
I thought that was That was so good. And I talked to a couple of my Desi friends. That is something that they get called by their family members back home in whatever parts of the Desi culture they're in. So I thought that was a pretty neat nod for them. So let's start off with thoughts on Karachi and where do we think we're going from here? Let's start with Kevin, because you look like you're going to explode.
Yeah, well, two things. One, I love how we got there. Listen, I was kind of concerned we were going to have a conversation where she's trying to force her mom over there and da-da-da-da. Instead, it's like, nope, hey, they're just going. Cool. I don't need to see it. Thank you. But also, I love, what is the first thing they show about Pakistan? Grass, trees. That, and I know me from my American brain, whenever I think of the Middle East, that whole area over there, I'm sorry, I think of desert. And I love that they did not show that. They showed this lush, beautiful climate with and I really appreciated that. And I just wanted to make sure. I love that. What a beautiful shots.
Yeah. I will say one thing I did enjoy is that poor guy on the airplane stuck in the middle of mom and I'm going to read my newspaper. I'm stuck in the middle. Because we've all been in that position before. So, Blythe, how about you?
So I love the opening of the show. I love when she goes to Karachi. I like that they didn't seem to use a filter like they
Yes,
normally
thank you.
do when they travel overseas or to a different country.
Yeah.
Cool.
They usually put something because
The
almost
yellow.
feels like they need to, like, some sort of distinction between what happens in the US and what happens when they're traveling. But they didn't do that with this. They left it open, and I'm glad they didn't, because there's so much color and there's so much life in this, in Karachi, in the city, and you would lose that if you were to put some sort of filter over it. So I love that they didn't do that.
Yeah.
I also liked, and I don't know if this was intentional or if it was because they were on the plane, but when they're traveling on the plane and you see the text messages from Nakia in the window, it looks like a text message. We lose that color and fun, and it seems to be because at that moment she's not feeling she's not feeling her lively, like, upbeat self. She's sad and she's scared, and she's going through this moment, and that's when the imagination of, like, how text messages appears kind of disappears. So I like that. I like that. That seems to be not just a styling choice that they did, but an actual, like, interpretation of her personality.
Mhm.
That's a very good point. Very good
I
point.
agree. Yeah, because we see it again later when she's talking to her grandmother, and in the sky, all of the
Yeah.
planes and the lights and everything turn
The
into
kites and-
text message from the kite, the text message from. I apologize, I can't remember what the Red Dagger kid's name is.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so from him, Kareem,
Yeah.
Kareem.
And that's when she's got some of her spark back, because she's met with
Yeah.
him. She's met with him. She's gotten some exposition into what's going on with her life, and now she's getting a text message, and now that spark is back.
Mm-hmm. I just want to touch quickly on one thing, and then I want to move into her meeting Kareem and that fun fight on the train station. But when we go into the grandmother's house, there's a very important moment where she walks into the grandmother's art studio. And so we see all of the grandmother's art. We see the portrait that she has done of Aisha, who we haven't technically met yet, but I feel like we're probably going to be meeting in the next episode, which we'll talk about when we get to that scene. But also on the wall, we see that the grandmother has kept a lot of newspaper clippings from the partition. So we obviously know from the beginning, we know culturally that the partition is a very important part of her family and her life. But now we're starting to see, I think it's also going to be a huge part of her development into Miss Marvel as we know her to be. And so I thought that scene was really, really interesting. Tyler, did you notice anything in there? You're our resident, find the little Easter egg kind of things. I might have.
First, I agree with all of you on the the stylings and everything they used when they traveled, the way they structured it. We didn't get this long drawn out thing. It's no, we're going to visit grandma. Great. We didn't get the ugly yellow filter and all that. Because it's a vibrant place. It's got a lot of color, a lot going on there in the streets. And in the streets, you see a photo booth there. It's got a little QR code. Pretty sure most people didn't miss this one. They pretty much shoved it right in your face. And that led you to Miss Marvel number 12, where she returns to her grandmother's home, or travels to her grandmother's home. So cool. Yeah, go ahead, keep scanning those. But the partition thing, it's a fun little. I think it's been a fun little thing. They keep talking about the partition, a divide, and then now we got exposition on the Nor dimension and all that, and talking about there's this divide between their dimension,
very good
and our
point.
dimension,
Wow.
or our world, and when that comes crumbling down, they're going to take over. And
very well said.
but yeah, I just think it's definitely they're making the case that partition was a very impactful time in their life that really set them on a different course, and I think in all roundabout way it's all connected.
Yeah.
Great.
I've got one more thing that I want to add just before we move on to the next section. There was a scene in this part of the show where when she's walking around with her cousins and they call her the ABCD and all that, where they did a really good job of, and this is to the writers and to the show, like they did a really good job of putting her in her like her family's like life, and just really showing how someone that's lived in America their own whole life is not getting, and they're living the culture is only getting like a tenth of what it's actually like. Like she almost says like mockingly at some point, like, I can't believe like this is happening. Or when she's eating the food, it's a culture shock for someone who's living in that culture. And I thought that was really like strong to the how they're writing this show. They're really like driving it home with that.
Yeah, they show her, going back to her roots there basically. And she's experiencing it for a lot of things for the first time. Like, why is this so spicy? And stuff like that. And she's walking around, and she's a terrible negotiator, by the way. Yeah, the guy's like 500 rupees for the shirt or whatever. She's like, 3? Nope. Okay. It's like, have you not traveled somewhere? You gotta hammer them. But no, you're right. It was cool how they did that, and they showed it. It seemed like if I were to return somewhere that were to visit my roots, I would be lost. And just experience everything for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's a really good point, because that's a really strong theme throughout the entirety of this show so far, is the sense of a divide. It goes back to the partition that you mentioned. We have the partition, the historical partition between India and Pakistan. We've got the partition between our dimension and the Noor dimension. We've got the partition that's between the divide that's between Kamala's life as an American, but also her background as a Pakistani. And we've got the divide between the mother and the grandmother, and the clandestines and the jinn. I mean, there's a sense of divide throughout this entire thing that kind of permeates everything. And so there's like the grand scale ones, and then there's the little scale ones. And it's throughout the entirety of the show. And I think that's a really interesting way that they've taken the theme of divide, division, partitions, and expanded into a lot of different aspects of this show. And it's really interesting to watch the journey, because clearly by the time we get to the end, regardless of anything that happens, we're going to see a combination happen, at least inside Miss Marvel herself, because she's obviously going to become Miss Marvel as we know her to be. She's going to accept that part of herself. But I feel, because we mentioned it when we talked about it with just us and off air, is she's also her costume is coming together a piece at a time. And we will know, because she's, in the first episode, she's wearing that cosplay version of Captain Marvel's costume. But we know, because of, we've seen it in the comic books, but we also know because there's been a lot of press photos and things released of it, she's going to be in that more traditional styled costume when she gets to that final point. So it's going to be that juxtaposition. And so there's more of those divides breaking down by the time we reach the end. And I really kind of dig how they do that with those kinds of things. So let's jump in and start talking about that fight scene at the train station.
Well, right before the fight scene, did you catch the huge Ant-Man Easter egg?
Oh,
That was-
clickbait.
We've had a little bit of a discourse here
Lord.
on iHeartGeek, guys. And the guys will back me up on this, but it seems to be that people keep referring to things as Easter eggs that are blatant nods. If it's an Easter egg, it's something you might not catch.
It's called
not the giant painting of Ant-Man sizing up.
Little PSA for our listeners.
Yeah,
If it's an Easter egg, you have to find it.
And At one point in this, there was literally Easter eggs when they fall out of the back of a cart during a chase. But
there are.
They're literally Easter eggs. You know what's interesting, and not to take a little side note, but I was just thinking about it when we're talking about this. We're talking about incursion again, right?
Yeah,
like where it's you have the Nor dimension coming over and taking over. I mean, and every show right now is going to start dealing with these incursions, and I think that's really cool. It just hit me. I was like, oh my god, that's an incursion again.
Well, if the end game is Secret Wars, then no pun intended there. Yeah, I think it makes perfect sense. You know, all these shows, you're going to start seeing a lot more of that.
That has to be, unfortunately, my biggest gripe with this show is they keep calling it a different dimension, and it feels like a multiverse. And in my head, a different dimension is different than a different multiverse.
Right.
So I'm trying to dissect this with that thought process, and it's confusing me. So now we have different dimensions, we have different universes, we have different timelines, there's a lot going on, and I'm wondering if that's intentional or if it is meant to be more of a multiverse, different universe than it is a dimension, because that makes sense that what they're talking about is an incursion, which we heard a lot of Multiverse of Madness. They were really talking about the incursions, and that's, like Tyler said, that's what leads to Secret Wars. And that's where she came into play. Miss Marvel, her debut comic came in when they were dealing with all of the different incursion and multiversal things. So it would make sense, but that trigger word of dimension is just it makes me want exposition as to what they're talking about, because I need an explanation at this point.
It's a dangerous game. You know, they've embarked on something to try and build this world with the multiverse and different realms or dimensions and stuff. You know, I mean, you got multiverses where you got universes that are just basically mirrored, and you got all your doppelgangers and stuff that exist alongside our universe. But then you got the realms, kind of, which you know exist between that, and that's
a lot.
Not an easy thing to do, to be writing stories where you have to deal with the universes and different realms and connect them all. You know,
I imagine at Marvel Studios there's a huge wall that they have a spider web. It's like
giant whiteboard.
It's over here. It's over here. Little like this, and
I think in terms of dimensions, the way that I understood it, based on what we're learning in this show, because we'll skip ahead to that particular scene. It's where Kareem takes her into the lair of the Red Threat Dagger or whatever they're called, and she meets Waleed, and Waleed starts to explain everything. He shows the map where it is the map of the world, basically, and then he turns on the overlay.
Twist a little.
And so I think, and I could be interpreting this completely wrong. So listeners, if you disagree, please comment, let me know. It's almost, the dimensions are almost an overlay of each other, where the multiverses are out there elsewhere.
Almost.
And then there's the timelines, but with the dimensions, they lay on top of each other. So here's our dimension, and then the Nor dimension or the clandestines is right on top of us. So they live in synchronicity. We just can't see the other dimension, and the other dimension can't see us.
There's a buffer.
There's that divide that what Waleed refers to as the veil of Nor that's blocking us from them and them from us. And if that were to go down, then they would engulf us and take over completely. But like I said, that's just how I'm interpreting, based on the way that Waleed shows Kamala how it exists.
Sure.
And I think that's a good thing to venture into. Again, the question of her being a djinn comes up, and then this is some debate that we've had. So I'm going to let Blythe talk about that.
So she's not a djinn. It's I mean, she's not.
Nope.
They specifically put the line there's a quote from the show where Waleed tells her, she asks him again, am I a jinn? And he looks at her and he says, if Thor landed in the Himalayas, then they would call him a jinn.
Yeah.
And
it's humanity that names them that.
Yeah, exactly. It's whatever. It's like how we call Thor a god. Well, he's not a god. Technically, he's an alien. He's from from the planet Asgard, and that is where he comes from. But we called him gods because we had no way of perceiving like what he was when he came to Earth. So she's not a jinn. I don't think that was a coincidence of them why they put that quote in the thing. It's figuring out, what is she? Is she an inhuman? Is she from or is her family from the Nord dimension? So she's whatever that is. Is she a mutant? There's, again, that's what this show is doing, is that it's creating a lot of speculation. And man, I hope we get it in these next 2 episodes. I'm being pretty upset.
I'm still holding on to she's an inhuman,
Yeah.
but I don't really know anymore, because she could be an inhuman, she could be an eternal, she could be a mutant, she could be anything at this point in time. We know she's not a jinn. But she could be any of these 3 things.
I know that's a point of frustration too for a lot a lot of people like to see online. It's just say she's an inhuman already. They're tired of playing that dance. But at the same time,
people don't like to be patient.
Yeah.
It's a 6 episode.
At the same time, it's a greatly written story. I mean, they're gonna make you lean one way, and then they're gonna make you go, oh well, maybe you'll go this direction now. I mean,
this isn't the Inhuman show.
I don't understand.
Yeah, no, this isn't the Inhuman show, and that's what would have happened if they would have straight out called her an Inhuman, is that they would have introduced it first, second episode, and then we would have had to meet Inhumans, right? We would have had to have exposition as to what Inhumans are, where they're from, how they get their powers, and all that. We don't need that in this show. This is a Miss Marvel show.
We get a little bit of that too.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's get a little taste of what it could be. Yeah, you tried an Inhuman show.
Maybe a giant dog shows up.
I want Lockjaw so bad.
We all want Lockjaw to show up. But if she turns out not to be an inhuman, there's not going to be any Lockjaw, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And she did an interview where she said she asked for a Lockjaw cameo and they told her no. But we also know that Marvel actors and executives lie like cheap rugs.
Yeah.
So we don't know it's coming, and I dig that.
So as a PSA, everybody just enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And speaking of rides and enjoying it, let's bump into the rickshaw and truck chase scene through Karachi. So our clandestines have broken out of Supermax for the Department of Damage Control, which was
something
really
masquerading as Supermax.
One thing I will say is them is
Supermax.
Awfully easy.
Yes.
To me,
but this is also the same facility that houses Abomination, as far as we can tell. It should be. That's the same place that we see in the She-Hulk trailers.
Right. So, anyways, that was a little easy. But also it's worth to note that they leave Kamran there.
Right.
Yeah.
She did him. Which I think also really points to our theory that he is not a clandestine. He is not a jinn. He is more closely related to whatever Kamala turns out to be.
Yep, I agree. He's also inhuman.
In the comics, he's an inhuman, right? He's got a light power.
Yeah, he's inhuman as well.
And he's going to wind up showing up last episode and saving the day.
I don't know
with Lockjaw and Black Bolt, they're all going to come out.
I don't know if he'll save the day, but I do know we do know he's going to show up at some point in time.
Yeah.
But I mean, no mother would leave her child there. So clearly she is not his mother. So I think, but yeah. So let's talk about this really fun and cool rickshaw truck chase scene through Karachi. What a fun way to do this. It has
it's so good.
I watched a lot of Bollywood films, and it feels like it has a very nice Bollywood action scene feel to it. One thing I will say is the actor who plays Waleed is actually a very huge Bollywood star. So
Really?
there's that as well. Yeah.
That's cool.
So thoughts. Let's start with Kevin.
Well, as soon as she got in the car, as soon as she got behind the wheel, I'm like, she's gonna run into something real quick. And just to kind of tie the first episode together. And as soon as she got in there, back up, boom. She knows the streets really well. She knows exactly where to go to find people. She has, I guess, GPS or something as one of her superpowers. I don't know. I don't ask too many questions. It's a great show, whatever. But yeah, it was a fun scene. It was definitely a fun scene. It really was.
She's coming more into her powers in this scene as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I love their use of her powers. I love that they have made the hand coming out. That is part of her power set now. Like, I was kind of concerned that with the band, she was not going to use that as much. But no, man, that's her. We still get the hand. It's part of her power set. Yeah, she's definitely coming into her own. It's pretty cool to watch.
Yeah. That was one thing that we saw when she met with Waleed and the Red Daggers, was she seemed to start to understand that her powers are an extension of herself. Like, you could see they were it was going over her entire body. And like you said, they're really starting to utilize that. The only thing that we really need to get from the comics is the super long legs, where she stops trying to jump on it, which they make a comment about, like, where'd you learn your powers? A Donkey Kong game, which we called out, like in the second epispisode, that she was playing a platformer. But yeah, when she stretches out her legs and she uses that to run over a long distance. But man, there's no way that she was driving that truck. You put me in a truck like that with a stick shift, and I'm not going anywhere. And she is barely learning how to drive, and
very to a point.
She took that stick shift and she was driving that truck, and I
will say, when she slams it into the clandestine, and he just kind of across the screen.
Man,
I laughed because I'm a terrible and it was very funny.
You knew he could take a hit. It was funny.
I know. Tyler, how about you?
No, that chase was awesome. To back up, when Red Dagger and her were fighting in the train station, there was a lot of like she made a Ninja Turtle reference. There was him using the "come with me if you want to live" from Terminator and everything.
That was good.
And then we get to this chase scene, and in the rickshaw and the big truck chasing him, it was kind of like the chase scene in Terminator too. So it was really fun.
That's funny.
Yeah, I really enjoyed when she just, of course, she slams it in reverse and and then coming through the street, man, that clandestine took a hit. Good Lord, I did. I laughed out loud. That was funny. But it was kind of cool too. During the chase, you saw literal Easter eggs fall out of the back of a little rickshaw or something.
Real Easter egg.
Actual Easter egg. So,
huge.
Yeah, it was a lot going on there. But it was pretty good, but at the same time, to see Waleed sacrifice himself like that to save them.
He was such a cool character.
He knows how important she is.
Yeah.
And that raises my question of, how do they know so much? Who this now Red Daggers is more of an organization rather than just a character like in the comics.
Yeah.
How do they know all of this? They have that tech, they have all this knowledge. He saw the inscription on her bangle, and he's like, of all the things I've heard of the bangle, I'd never seen that inscription before. And what you're seeking is seeking you, something like that. Well, who did he hear this from? Who is he learning this stuff from?
Maybe there we do have a Bollywood member of the Eternals, and they are very high-tech people, and I would be shocked if we don't see him in the next, in this episode, going in the past to tie everything together. But that would be a great way to tie movies together, because we have not seen a connection to the Eternals yet, and this seems like a show we would get some kind of connection to an Eternals with.
That's the thing is I think if they do end up going the Eternals route with her as opposed to being an Inhuman, we've already had reference to Kingo a couple of times. So it's not like there haven't been any references to the Eternals within this show yet. They've been there. They're very subtle, except for the one where she's talking to Cameron about Kingo. Like, they have a whole discussion about Kingo, because he, in the Eternals movie, he's managed to keep himself under the radar as creating an entire family of Bollywood actors, which is just him. Yeah. And so they mentioned that. So it would be really interesting if the cameo, because we know that there's somebody going to show up, whether it be Lockjaw, whether it be one of the Captain Marvels, whether it be Monica, or whether it be Carol.
Yeah,
it very well might be Kingo. Kingo might show up as an Eternal, because maybe, as we kind of hypothesized or speculated at the beginning of this, is maybe the bangle is not Inhumans tech. Maybe the bangle is Eternals tech. And so this would be a great place to tie the Eternals movie into the MCU, because they haven't done that before. I don't know if Marvel's going to do the same thing with the Eternals movie that they did with the Inhumans show and just kind of brush it aside, because it wasn't as popular and it wasn't as strong, and so they kind of shove it aside. But I mean, they did bring back Black Bolt back into Multiverse of Madness, so it's a very possibility that they might bring Kingo in to to the Miss Marvel world. I mean, but maybe we won't get anything at all.
I'm still going to subscribe to the Inhumans theory, though, train of thought, because I mean, with the beacon and everything, when she put that on, there's a beacon being sent out signaling somebody. It's not the Eternals; they're already there.
The same thing with Shang-Chi's bracelets. They're sending the 10 rings are sending something out, and it would make sense that
the
Inhumans.
Yeah, the Inhumans show up and all that. But that inscription, I think it was more of a warning than anything. It's not so much like this fortune cookie thing where she's like, oh, what I'm seeking is gonna seek me. Cool, I'm gonna get what I want or whatever. No, I think it was like a warning. Like, look out, something's coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we're gonna see it next episode, or part of it next episode, based on what happens next. So she is fighting with Naja, and she ends up spearing her in the bracelet, in the bangle, and then all of a sudden we are shot back into 1942 Pakistan, and it is the train station, and it is partition, and it is the night of partition. And I guess our thoughts, listeners, we'd like to hear yours, but our thoughts is she really back in time? Is it a vision? What's going on? So let's get our thoughts on that. Let's start with you, Blythe.
I don't know what to make of this scene. I watched it, and we were watching it, and we're like, she's sidestepping people. She's not phasing through. Her. Yeah, people step around her, but no one seems to notice her, which is a little weird, because it's not like she's in 1942 clothing, but it's also partition, so maybe no one cares. There's bigger things going on in the world, besides the way this random girl looks. So it's hard to say. It's hard to say if it actually is a trip to the past, which messes with my perceptions about how time travel works within the MCU, given that we've seen it done before in Endgame. So it could very well go both ways. It could be just a choice they made to not have to CGI her phasing through people and just kind of her walking through a crowd as if she's walking through a crowd. But yeah, we'll see. It was another one where I was like, come on. We needed answers, and now you've just dumped a bunch more questions in our lap. So thanks, Marvel. Appreciate it.
Tyler, how about you?
Well, it was real fitting. They put her at a train station because we all had to board the speculation train to figure out what the hell's going on here. No, when she fell back, obviously there was like tears, that kind of formed, and as she fell back, and it did look very similar to when Clea shows up at the end of Multiverse of Madness and cuts open, the fabric of whatever, and they go into the dark dimension. It was very similar. So I'm leaning away from actual time travel. I don't think that's going to be it. I know that was a big theory out there that, maybe it's a big time loop thing that's fulfilling itself, that she showed up and she was the path of stars, that they follow to get back on the train and get out of there. I don't really think that's going to be it. I think it's something to do with maybe some sort of vision or memory, that the bangle was either containing or produced, or maybe she linked up, that maybe the bangle had the power to link her up with Aisha back in the day, which was a Wednesday, by the way. So there's a lot of speculation, man. And I'm sure they did that on purpose. They in her visions before, you saw the train coming at her. Maybe that's why the great grandmother disappeared. Maybe she got hit by a train. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm at a bit of a loss at this point, this ending.
That's a good point. Maybe she's in the body of her great grandmother. I never even thought about that. Maybe
it could be that
was just is synced up with the great grandmother, and she's going to live that moment through the eyes of her.
Maybe she walks by something and we'll get a reflection, and she looks and it's her great grandmother's face.
That's a solid theory. I like that, Tyler. That solves all of my qualms with this whole thing.
There you go.
It seems very intentional, doesn't it? Like a dagger to hit the bangle. It was very intentional the way it happened. I don't know if it's that
it didn't seem like she was trying to stab her, did it?
No, it looked like she was aiming for the bangle. So I'm really, as soon as this happened, I was like, are you kidding me? We had so many answers, now so many questions. I wish I can come on here and have some kind of concise answer, but I think like all of us, I'm just along for the ride, and I can't wait for another 3 days to figure out and what's going to happen. And I'm hoping. So the grandmother knows, right? The grandmother was expecting it. So when she comes home, talks to her, oh, did you see it? That's a horrible accent. I apologize for that. But she's gonna ask the question, hey, do you have your answers now? And so the grandmother was expecting this. I think grandmother was expecting all of it. But other than that, great show.
So let's do our grades for the episode, and again, we'll do our what we expect or what we hope will happen in the next episode. I think we're all going to answer the same thing, and it's going to be, please tell us what's going on.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and start with our grades for the episode. Kevin, where are we at?
I'm riding the A train, and that's a boys reference. Great show, but I'm riding the A train. This show is just phenomenal. It's wild that the first two episodes is like, see, it's not for me. Da, da, da. And now just riding that A train, man. This show's great. I love the way it makes you feel. I love the way it makes me think. I love the way that I'm constantly scouring stuff, trying to figure out what's going on. It's right up my alley. I love it.
Tyler?
I'm gonna give this one a B-, just for the fact that it was a good episode. I'm enjoying the show, but any exposition we got only raised more questions. I wanted at least a solid answer on something. like, yeah, it's inhuman tech or, just something. But that does make it fun. That's why I'm going to continue to watch, but I want these answers. So it's doing its job, drawing me in. That's why it doesn't get a C, it gets a B minus. The fight scenes and chase scenes were pretty good. The one in the train station was a little cheesy for me, but yeah, I think that was meant to be that way because they didn't end up being mortal enemies or anything. So yeah, go with a B minus on this one. Oh, and I need next week to know why the mom doesn't have these visions that the grandmother does. I mean, it seems to be going down the line. Why is the mom left out of this loop? I need to figure this out.
She probably never put the bangle on. Would be my.
If the grandmother,
that's the only answer I can come up with. She never put the bangle on, but the rest of them did.
Yeah. So the grandmother probably did put it on at some point because she had it and then she sent it to Kamala. So I'm sure that.
Right. Like your
if
mom
the
won't listen to me, but maybe you will.
Yeah.
Also, why is it the women in the family? These are all questions I have. I need answers.
I mean, if the men in the family are anything like the dad, then they're just chilling, man.
They're along for the ride, brother.
I love the dad. He's so great.
It'd be wasted on them. It'd just be,
Exactly.
Look at my big fist. I'll get something out of the fridge.
Exactly.
Never.
That's what I'd be doing.
I will never not love the dad dressed in the Hulk costume, the handmade Hulk costume, when he was yelling at the Alexa thing that Bruno made. Chef's kiss. Anyways, Flies. What's your grade for this episode?
I'm sticking with the B because of all the unanswered questions and really wanting to wait to see where this kind of ends up. If this ends up kind of in the direction that we're thinking it's going to end up, this will probably be my favorite Marvel TV show that they've done. Above WandaVision, above Loki.
Really?
Yeah, I think that this show has done the best job of introducing a character, showing what they can do with these TV shows, creating stakes for the movies. Kevin kind of hinted on that. You're learning about the family, you're learning about the connections with her friends. So when she goes into a movie and something happens to her or potentially happens to her, I'm going to care about it now because I know she has she has a life outside of just the 30 minutes of movie origin that we get normally.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, it's gonna take a pretty big like bad turn in order for me not to fully enjoy this show by the time it's over. If they just go off the rails in the next 2 episodes, which they could very well do. We don't know what's going to happen.
That's where the grade will drop if they do that.
But if they don't and they keep to doing what they're doing, this is a home run for me for sure.
Yeah, it's a comic book. I'm watching a comic book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
Exactly. Guess it's my turn. I'm going to go with B plus. For all the same reasons everybody else was talking about. I mean, I loved the chase scene with the rickshaw and the truck. I dug it so much. And then the fight scenes are so much fun as well. But also, she is just such an engaging and adorable character. And Iman Vellani plays her so well. I mean, you care so much about her. And you care so much about her journey and all of the stuff that's just going on. And it just, every episode just escalates that for me. Like, I would protect her with my no-powered self. Like, no, don't hurt her. And I'm like, Flies, unless they take a massive dump in the next 2 episodes, this is going to be one of my top 5 of what they've put out on the TV shows. And it also, at least for me, my thoughts is, it seems that every single one of these episodes, every single one of these TV shows they put out gets better and better.
Yeah.
WandaVision's still my number 1, but the WandaVision was great. While I while Captain America and Winter Soldier is not my top, personally, it's right up there too. Loki was great. I mean, everything just been, Marvel just keeps getting better and better and better with their offerings, and I think that's what's happening with this one, and I love it.
They're going places.
Exactly.
I'll tell you, man, they're going to get big.
Each offering is different. That's the thing, and I think that leads back to the comment where we were wondering why there's hate comments for the show. It's different. Everything that they've given us is different.
Yeah. Each one's different from the next.
Yeah.
Each movie is different. Each TV show is different. Which
is why it's not unexpected to see that.
Exactly.
Hate and everything, but
And so that, listeners and my boys, is an episode.
I've got one thing. I've got one thing before we close out. Sorry, guys. First of all, I like that Tyler is like, someone's going to hear about Marvel Studios one day. They're really coming up. They're doing things.
Go ahead, kid.
The costume, just real quick. Courtney, you mentioned how we keep getting little pieces to the costume. I love how, like you said, she starts wearing the Captain Marvel cosplay because that's the hero in her mind that she wants to be. And now she's becoming the hero that she's going to be. I want to know from you guys, who do you think is going to create the costume? Is it going to be Bruno when she gets back to the States? Is he going to have it done for her? Or is it going to be the mother?
I think it's the mom.
You think it's the mom?
Mom.
Mother all the way.
I think she's going to come around. She's going to learn of her powers. She's going to come around. Yep. It's going to be. She's going to support
Mother's
her.
going to. Kamala's going to wind up saving her mother.
Right. Something like that.
The Celestials are going to attack the family, and then there you go. That's what's going to happen next 2 episodes. Celestials are going to attack. That's not Celestials. You know what I mean? The
Celestials.
Wow, man, we're going straight into Celestials. Nice.
So the clandestines are going to attack the family. Hey, Kamala, you got to come get us now. And then she's going to come over there, save the day. Mom's like, hey, your costume sucks. Here's a new one. Or let me put it together. There it is. Next 2 episodes.
Now we can be wrong, but I do hope Mom is the one. Because I think that would just be perfect.
Yeah.
While you were gone, we got a pet dog. Yeah.
And he's the biggest, most fluffiest dog.
Yeah. That's gonna be the dad. The dad at the very end of the last episode, the dad's going to be like, while you guys were out doing this, the stray walked up and I've just been keeping him back here, feeding him treats.
Big dog.
He likes hugs.
He talks to me.
Yeah, he's real big. Be careful. He'll sneak up on you, though. It's real weird.
On that note, we're going to close this out. I want to thank Tyler and Blythe and Kevin for joining in our Miss Marvel Love Fest because it's what we do. And check us out on socials, listener. We have all of them: TikTok, Instagram, all that stuff. Check us out there. And you can also check us out online at iHeartGeekShow.com. Use the com. We paid extra for it. Check us out on our Facebook page. And if you have anything you think we missed or you want to talk about something that we said, or if you disagree with us, please put it in the comments. Check us out. Put it on Facebook. Put it on YouTube. We love to talk back because obviously we love to talk. So that's the show. And ladies and gentlemen, keep on geeking on. Woo!
You have been listening to the latest episode of the iHeart Geek Show. Make sure you visit our website at www.iheartgeekshow.com. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And if you check us out on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And keep on geeking on to all of you geek rock stars.